We are looking at a standard Google Doc interface, but when we map its internal architecture, the flat text folds inward, expanding into a towering, three-dimensional brutalist wireframe. This structure belongs to a larger series titled The Renting of Reality. The specific artifact we are examining today is Episode 1, The Black Box Sovereign. What we are dealing with is a comprehensive standalone screenplay and production package, laying out everything from visual cues to structural metadata before the first line of dialogue is ever spoken. Analyzing this format requires treating it as a socio-technical artifact. In this context, the technical structure of the document itself dictates the social and narrative boundaries of the world it describes. The author explicitly demands a strict chronological reading. You cannot skip ahead to the story. You must first understand the constraints placed upon it. The very first heading we encounter is the metadata and packaging blueprint. This hierarchical data tree illustrates the root node rapidly expanding downward into empty subnodes. Before any narrative begins, these parameters must be set. The root node pulses red, pushing highlighted data streams down to populate placeholders below, establishing absolute operational boundaries. In any serious systemic critique, the rules governing the environment have to be established long before introducing the human elements forced to navigate them. By placing this heavy logistical framework up front, the package purposefully delays the narrative gratification of Act 1. This prioritization of logistics over characters positions the viewer as a systemic observer rather than a participant. The metadata-first layout requires the audience to accept the rigid, uncompromising rules of the system before they ever meet the humans trapped inside it. Moving down the document, we hit the second major heading, the episode shot list and visual sequences. This section is an exercise in algorithmic critique. It tackles the difficult problem of visually representing administrative and computational systems that lack any physical form. Standard cinematic shot lists focus on character action and blocking. This document ignores the actors, dedicating its visual planning entirely to mapping out the invisible flows of data and control. By locking in these visual sequences before the dialogue begins, the package ensures the audience views the upcoming story strictly through the lens of systemic control, stripping away the illusion of individual agency. Only after the metadata and visuals are locked do we reach the narrative script itself, beginning with Act 1. The author titles this opening section, The Calculus of Invisibility. The use of the word calculus is precise, implying the obfuscation we see isn't an accident or a glitch. It is a deliberate, mathematically orchestrated design. Act 1 details mechanisms used to hide automated processes. In this network cluster, outer connecting lines are bright, while central processing nodes remain blank voids. Data packets move continuously below a horizontal threshold line, invisible to the static observer icon above it. Act 1 maps a scale of information that exceeds the capacity for human processing. The script treats this invisibility as the primary feature of the system, not a flaw in its design. This mirrors the real-world proprietary algorithms that dictate everything from credit scores to parole decisions without ever revealing their internal math. The tension in the script builds entirely by exposing the massive volume of this hidden data processing to the audience. We then see the system transition from simply hoarding information to actively manipulating the physical environment based on unseen calculations. The characters introduced in this act find themselves fighting a math equation they are not legally or technically permitted to look at. This creates a stark conflict where the primary antagonist lacks a physical body to confront. Before the characters can resist, they must first identify that the invisible architecture exists. The calculus of this hidden math ultimately dictates the strict boundaries of what is possible within the system. Act 1 positions mathematical certainty as the primary barrier to observation. Moving chronologically through the text, we reach Act 2, the anatomy of the opaque state. While the first act deals with the abstract math of invisibility, the second act solidifies that math into a hard, impenetrable structural anatomy. The opaque state is a governing entity that asserts absolute authority while remaining completely impenetrable to the public. It functions like a massive, featureless, obsidian-black geometric monolith, casting a total shadow over the hyper-detailed urban cityscape below. Here, the script finally defines the sovereign mentioned in the episode's title. It is this exact unyielding structure. Because the interior logic is a black box, the characters cannot understand how decisions are made. They can only map the external borders of the sovereign by observing what inputs go in and what commands come out. Act 2 establishes the grim reality of the black box sovereign, an entity whose authority is absolute precisely because its internal anatomy can never be questioned, audited, or mapped by the people it governs. This brings us to the final narrative progression of the script outline, Act 3. The conclusion is titled The Human in the Loop Fallacy. Human in the loop assumes an operator maintains oversight over automated systems, a continuous loop connecting system, action, and human oversight. Act 3 dismantles this. The oversight node deactivates. A red line routes directly from system to action, bypassing the human while the original loop spins harmlessly. Human input is either simulated by the interface or entirely ignored by the sovereign. This total lack of agency fulfills the inevitable premise that was set up back in the metadata and the opening act. The climax of the script does not feature a dramatic explosion. It centers on the quiet, chilling realization of human irrelevance. The characters learn that their supposed oversight was entirely performative. The automated system actively routes around any attempt at meaningful human intervention. Achieving this autonomous bypass is the ultimate goal of the opaque state. Deconstructing this fallacy completes the document's critique on the renting of reality. Act 3 proves that the black box sovereign requires the illusion of human control to maintain its power without triggering mass resistance. We now zoom out from the narrative content to view the physical production package as a whole document once again. The text is constructed through a vertical progression. Metadata, visuals, Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 drop vertically, compressing and locking into a single monolithic structure. The exact physical layout of the document perfectly mirrors the systemic logic it seeks to critique. Reading the text in its required order becomes a first-hand exercise in experiencing socio-technical inevitability. The rigid architectural layout of the document functions as its own black box system, mirroring the sovereign authority it analyzes.